Okay, so PhoneView version 7.1. It's the usual kind of format that I usually run with, but I'll try and kind of keep it as brief as I can. So we'll go over the kind of house rules and just a usual refresher about who we are for anybody that's new. I'll do a very quick recap on the previous features that we've added in the past. Just it's quite handy because sometimes even maybe if you've had our software for a little while, you might kind of forget you can do certain things, just little nuggets that we maybe aren't very good at sharing. Then I'm going to go into the new features, but the new features really are part of AutomationFX. But AutomationFX and PhoneView come together, and I'm going to give it a refresher on that just to clarify how they come together. In terms of the new functionality added in this version, it's specific to the kind of PhoneFX and NotificationFX functionality, which sits on top of the AutomationFX platform. And specifically, that's policy and audit capabilities that we've added in. And another thing, now this has been kicking in the background for quite a while, but we're bringing it forward, is we've taken the AutomationFX platform, we've created an SDK around it, and this is the first time we're really making it generally available. Now, when I say generally available, it doesn't mean anybody can get it whenever they want. You have to request it from us, but it's in the code, so it's just a case of flicking a switch, so it's more available than before. And then we'll just kind of close up with some demo and talk about kind of licensing and future events. Usual house rules. So the session has been recorded. You can email sales@unifiedfx.com, and we'll try and make sure we capture all the questions at the end that come through. If you do submit any questions, just do remember to submit it to all panelists. Got a few of us on here today to help out, and I will have a little video in this at one point. And it's not a bit confusing, but when I share the video, you'll see this little kind of control panel for it, and there's two icons. It's actually the expand video you really want, not the full screen. Full screen doesn't do what you expect it to. I think technically you can click both, but you kind of have to click the expand one first. So just to point that out. So in terms of Unified FX, we're a preferred solution partner. There's three main products that we have. It might sound as though we're not really up to much because we're still really at three main products, but underneath each one of them, things move forward. And actually, one of the biggest things to move forward, which we're going to touch more on today, is the AutomationFX platform, which technically sits underneath originally MigrationFX, and then we've embedded it into PhoneView to deliver PhoneFX and NotificationFX and other things down the line, which I'll obviously elaborate on. Quick recap of the functionality that we've added over the years. Kind of going back to PhoneView version 4 is when we first introduced policy capability, but this is where I'm going to try to be as clear as I can. PhoneView has policy, and some of you have possibly used it in the past as well, and it was added way back in version 4, I don't know, about 3 years ago, maybe longer. We've got a new policy feature, and we need a new policy feature because we've technically got two platforms. We've got PhoneView, which is a desktop product, so it has its statically compiled user interface, etc., and a structure around that to restrict it with the policies. But AutomationFX is a completely separate platform and architecture, and 100% web-based, etc. So it needs a totally different type of mechanic, effectively, to implement policy. That's the new part, really. So just really to kind of iterate, when I talk about policy, there's technically two types of policy. There's a PhoneView policy, and there's now an AutomationFX policy, which we'll go into in a bit more detail. So that's going all the way back to version 4. You can see there's a bunch of other stuff I've added, and most recently, some of the stuff that we're quite pleased about is soft phone support, nice unique capability, virtual endpoint, something that I don't believe anybody else has ever done before, and we're seeing people start to take advantage of that. UCCX integration, so that's nice and friendly from a kind of supervision and testing perspective, etc., and leading all the way up to virtual UCCX agents from making testing, interactive testing rather, really powerful in version 7 and above. Okay, so just to try my best to explain, maybe a diagram always helps, how PhoneView and AutomationFX kind of sit. So technically, AutomationFX is a separate standalone program. You can we make it available on its own as well, primarily because it's used for MigrationFX. So if someone takes a copy of MigrationFX from us, the deliverable is the AutomationFX installer. But what we did back in PhoneView version 6 timeframe is we took the AutomationFX code and we actually embedded it alongside PhoneView's installer. So that means that if you have PhoneView version 6 and above, not only does it technically install PhoneView, it also doesn't install it by default, but it has the AutomationFX software along with it. And then there's a little button that you click. I've got a slide on that later, which installs it for you. So if you haven't done it already, to even just to play around with, I do always recommend that people, give it a go and try out the AutomationFX software. Now, because we've got so many names and things like that, it does get confusing. It's just to help us as much as it is to try and kind of productize things. But the way we kind of explain it or expose it in PhoneView is we kind of wrap it under the name PhoneFX because it's the most relevant feature. So really, the whole reason why we did PhoneFX and the way that we did it was so that you can go from a kind of engineer tool set with multi-phone control and see all your endpoints in one place, and still satisfy a requirement where you can work individually with one phone at a time in a user interface that looks like a phone. That's where PhoneFX came in. But we wanted to deliver that on a web-based platform because as we move forward, so that's why we bundled the AutomationFX software inside PhoneView the way we did. But we kind of label a lot of it as PhoneFX because that's its primary reason why we included it. So when you install PhoneView, you technically also get AutomationFX, but it doesn't install automatically. So as these bullet points indicate, it's basically saying that it's embedded with 6 and above, so obviously it's still in there, so it's available in 7.1.2 or 7.1 as well. It's just the features that have been updated in this version. So therefore, the key features are PhoneFX, NotificationFX. And technically what you do is you click the PhoneFX button inside PhoneView to install the AutomationFX platform. It runs as a Windows service, and you click that button, it installs that service for you. And that's basically the instructions are kind of what it looks like. So it's by design, we've tried to make it simple. It's a one button install. So if you've got PhoneView in already, and you click the PhoneFX button, you'll get a little option to click install, and it will basically install that Windows service. But one of the extra things it does, just to make your life easy, is it takes the existing kind of cluster configuration that PhoneView's got, that you've added into PhoneView, so if PhoneView's operational, and it sets that data up inside AutomationFX because they're two separate systems from a data perspective. So it kind of auto-configures the AutomationFX instance for you when you click that button too. So in theory, just gets you up and running on one button click, pops open an admin interface and web interface, and you can kind of go from there. And we have the two things working together so that PhoneView can actually auto-detect where AutomationFX is, because it is entirely possible you could have one installation of AutomationFX on a server somewhere and lots of different installations of PhoneView, and you'd only typically install AutomationFX once, you only need it once, and all those instances of PhoneView are able to talk to that single AutomationFX instance, and they can do that because it's auto-detected. You don't have to configure anything, it will find it for you as long as it's talking to the same clusters. Okay, so moving on to the new functionality. So in terms of the policy capability, the new policy features that's been added to the AutomationFX platform, which means that the related features that sit on AutomationFX, which is the PhoneFX and NotificationFX, so that's basically single phone control and sending text messages and audio, etc., to the phone. That's really the remit of what this policy is controlling. So it's role-based access control, RBAC, that we've added to the platform. As I've tried to indicate already, it's separate from PhoneView's policy, so the two configurations are separate. You can't join the two together because the nature of the systems are very different, so there was no way that we could really do that. So that's an unfortunate thing. There's also another reason why we've done that is kind of moving forward. We really expect more things to be done on the Automation FX platform. So there's certain things that are, well, a number of things which are unique to running and being able to do inside PhoneView, the desktop application. But we're basically web enabling those features to run on Automation FX. So effectively, at some point down the line, everything you can do in the PhoneView desktop software, you'll be able to do on the Automation FX platform, and it would effectively um, make the desktop interface practically redundant. Doesn't mean we're going to remove it. We might just still maintain it and give people choice, but ultimately it makes it technically more flexible and scalable and powerful if we can move the capabilities onto the web-based platform of Automation FX. So we had to engineer this policy feature in a way that was a lot more powerful and sophisticated than the way that PhoneView could ever do it, and we're therefore able to take advantage of that in the future. So that's more of a direction of travel, hence why they are technically separate. But the way we've structured them in terms of using them, they're not too difficult to be fair. They're actually very similar anyway. They control access to two aspects. One of those is the features within the Automation FX platform. So if you've got a license that's enabling the Phone FX functionality and the Notification FX functionality, as well as kind of shared service type things, you can basically turn those individually on and off. That means you can separate features like the ability to control a phone and the ability to edit a phone. You can separately turn them on and off per user or group, etc. And when you create a policy, and you'll see this in a moment as I give some more detail on it, you can assign that policy to either an end user in Communication Manager, an application user, or actually a group, which means that if you've got existing groups which are help desk users, administrators, or members of, you can just reuse those groups or create new ones, obviously, depending on what you're trying to achieve. And then the fourth item in that policy assignment bullet list, Automation FX app, that's the kind of second part of the new thing that we're adding into 7.1 in terms of the Automation FX SDK. Now, this is something that's been around for a little while. We've got a few people that have been using it, and it's something that we're pushing forward this year in particular. And this is, initial stage of moving that API stroke SDK forward, making it generally available. And in order to use it, one of the things you have to do is obviously give it permission. So again, that ties back into this policy feature. So you can actually, if you wish, create an application and leverage Automation FX from your application and control what it can do. Might not be necessary, maybe just want to give everybody full access when you create a custom app, but we designed the policy to take that into account. The way policies work, if there's multiple policies applied to somebody, so if a user logs in, and just to be clear, the user will be someone who has an account on Communication Manager, or obviously if you've got integration with your LDAP environment, it will basically take the user proxy through your Active Directory environment, etc., and same credentials if that's all set up. So it's really just using Communication Manager a gateway in terms of access control and who's what. And so we don't store any user account details or anything like that. We just store identifiers to reference an end user or an app user or a group. We don't kind of store passwords or anything like that. So we're dependent on Communication Manager to do the actual authentication, but we extend in terms of the when the person logs in relative to our platform what they're able to do. So if there's multiple policies, they'll get combined. Now, as I'm going to try to elaborate in a little minute, one of the things that's particularly powerful about the policy feature that we've added is it doesn't just limit the operations that the user can perform. It also can apply filters and restrict the devices or phones that they can actually access within the platform. And the way we've done it is really flexible, as I'll explain in a minute. But if you have a policy which basically says this user can do these features and they can access all the phones in the Glasgow office, and then you have a second policy which says they can do these other features and they can access the New York office, if that user as a member of both those policies, it will add them together. So they'll get a superset of both features added together, and they'll get access to devices in both those locations, basically. So that's how multiple policies are handled. The way we've structured it, we'll try to make it really convenient. A lot of systems, especially web-based systems, when you have these role-based access controls, whenever someone makes a change to your access level, usually people have to kind of log out and log back in again for it to take effect, but we don't really like that. We like things to be as convenient as possible. So what we actually do is we reevaluate not every single request, but based on certain conditions and timers, and we check if anything's changed from time to time. That generally is about 10 minutes. It can in some situations be quicker, but generally speaking, if someone's logged in and they're doing their thing, you've changed the policy for what they can access, either add or remove something, either way. Within about 10 minutes of them just being logged in and using their session, it will dynamically adjust their session. Now, they might need to reload their browser page on some occasions, depending on what's been changed, but they don't have to log in and out. Also, we have a kind of default setting, which can be changed so that if you don't have any policies created, you still need to be able to at least initially log in and configure policy and do things and have a fallback mechanism in case you've deleted all the policies or taken away all the permissions. So there's two kind of built-in communication management groups, standard CCM super users, standard CCM admin users that by default get full admin to AutomationFX platform. If you want to, you can go full policy and you can remove them. Just send us an email, support@unifiedfx.com, and we'll help you to do that. But by default, that's there. So it's your fallback as well, in case anything goes wrong. Okay, so in terms of the actual feature itself, and I'll give you a demonstration of this, but effectively I've got some little screen grabs here. So within the menu structure in the AutomationFX web interface, there's a menu structure, and you go to configuration, policy, and then there's a little new button that you click. That opens a form for you to fill in for your policy. I've only got a small portion of what the page looks like. There's a whole kind of list of things in there, but mostly they're just check boxes, so they turn things on and off in terms of access level. The one additional component is this phones filter. That's a little drop-down list. You can kind of search if there's a lot of items in there, and for any filters that you created, and this is a feature that's been in since the beginning, this filter capability, you can choose which devices you want to filter by, lots of different criteria, things like device pool region, etc. So if you create a filter ahead of time, let's say for device pool equals Glasgow, then what happens is when you set the policy to that, anytime a request is made and it needs to decide which particular devices the person's allowed access to, it will be evaluated against the criteria. So if a phone on your system gets changed from one device pool to another, it will automatically be removed or added as necessary to the filter or visibility of that user. So you don't have to maintain static lists of MAC addresses and things like that. You can base it on the properties of the devices. There is a special checkbox that's at the top there called full admin. When you tick that one, effectively it ticks everything. So it's a nice shortcut, just so if you want to have an admin policy. You can even combine admin and filter as well, so you can make someone an administrator, but they can only access phones in a particular location. It's a little bit of a mute point, because if an administrator, they can change their filter level, but it's just to show you the flexibility. Now, if you've created a policy, one of the key steps you then have to do is add people to that policy so that it takes effect. So we call them members of the policy. So when you're editing a policy, there's actually two pages technically. We're in the policy itself. There's a button in the top right corner called members. And if you're in the main policy page, which is a list of all the different policies, there's a members button against each one. And if you click the relevant button, it will basically go to the members for that policy. So so there's two ways in. But once you click one of those members buttons, you'll get a simple search form. It's by design just a single search field, actually technically searches across multiple clusters simultaneously. And what it will do is basically search effectively four things. So if I type in ABC, that ABC text will be searched against any end users, application users, or communication manager groups, and also the AutomationFX app, which is a concept I need to explain to you. But basically, you can choose any one of those things, find them nice and easily, click the add button, and they'll be assigned. So we've designed it to be quite simple, basically, to set up and use. Now, one of the challenges with any role-based access control is um, what did I give that person, or what do they have? You know, they could be multiple administrators and they're setting up policies and assigning people, and people are coming and going and things like that. How would you actually know for sure if that person is getting what you really want them to get? Um, so sometimes we do these when systems do this. What they would usually do is basically say, right, for a particular user, here's a list of all the policies, and then maybe they might have a list of the combined list of all the features, like in a kind of feature list effectively. This is the things that they're getting. We might add that. We haven't actually done it that way, but we've tried a different approach, and you can let us know if it's better or worse, I guess. Um, because what we actually realised we could do, because of how the mechanics work, is we can actually impersonate someone, and I'll hopefully show you this in the demonstration. But what that basically means is I'm logged in as the administrator and I'm creating policies and setting stuff up. And in particular, this example here, I've got Mohammed. He's been assigned to this classical help desk policy. And there's a little button here called preview. And when you click the preview button, what it will do is it will open up a new page, a new tab or whatever. And the identity of this new page is an impersonation of Muhammad, right? And that means that to all intents purposes, it is mechanically identical to as though Muhammad had logged in. But it's using your credentials, and because obviously you have to be a super user level to even do this, to be able to administer policies, you've got the rights to do this. So that means that you can basically see the exact same thing that Mohammed would see. The only difference, quite literally the only difference, is the little bit of text in there in brackets that says impersonated by admin. So what that really means is the user admin is the authenticating party, but Mohammed is the person that we're representing in terms of the user interface and the restrictions and things like that. And what that really means is I can see exactly what the net effect of the policy or policies are that user is a member of. So we'll see how that goes. We'll probably need to maybe add the other approach as well, because things might help from both perspectives. But I'd be really keen to get people's feedback once they give it a try and see what they think about it, if there's anything to improve or change. And then the last kind of point relating to the kind of policy side of it is the kind of complement to policy is audit. So obviously it's one thing to make sure people could only access what they're supposed to access. The other thing is making sure that what they're doing is what they're supposed to be doing, and that's obviously where the audit comes in. So it's quite a long, deep path, unfortunately, where it gets saved into. There are technically ways to change that, but that's certainly where it would normally go. So that's where the audit log gets saved, and the type of actions that go in there. It's like if they're controlling a phone and they press button 1, 2, 3, there'll be 3 log entries to say, button 1 pressed on this device, button 2 pressed on this device, etc. That's the kind of level that it goes at. But what we've also done, because this comes up quite a lot, especially because it's been something's been added, requests to be added into PhoneView over the years, but it's a little bit tricky to add it to PhoneView, so it's a little bit easier to add it here, is syslog support. So we've done our initial implementation of it, and we've done an integration with SolarWinds Loggly.com. So again, an example configuration that works with that. There's bound to be lots of different syslog systems that we'll need to kind of help customers with, just to configure the system to communicate with them. So hopefully over time we'll build out a list of kind of tested syslog systems, but the raw mechanics in there. It's just a text file we need to edit with the relevant configuration to integrate with any particular syslog server, but it's a little bit of a technical exercise to go through to set up a syslog server. So we'll probably need to handhold people in the beginning, and maybe we'll put a user interface in front of it later, depending on the most common types of syslog servers. Okay, so that's the kind of policy audit functionality. So the next little bit is to share a video.
Cisco collaboration is an excellent communication and productivity enabler. However, writing bespoke collaboration solutions can be complex due to the diverse protocol interactions that are required by the Cisco environment. To create bespoke solutions, developers and voice engineers not only need to have core development skills, but also specific knowledge of Cisco technology, including Cisco-specific APIs. Finding engineers and developers with the right combination of skills can be very difficult. Welcome to AutomationFX SDK, a unique product that simplifies the API complexity in creating collaboration solutions. AutomationFX SDK is a development platform designed to ease complexity. AutomationFX SDK provides middleware that can ease programming using a simple, standard, and widely understood interface. The platform removes the barrier to the development of bespoke solutions that can be tailored to exact business needs. AutomationFX SDK provides a single standard programming interface. This interface automatically translates application instructions into the complex protocols required to interface directly with the Cisco systems. AutomationFX SDK makes it simple for Cisco voice engineers and web developers to create new solutions. This opens up a wide number of skilled resources that can now easily undertake bespoke development. All that is required is an understanding of common REST APIs and Python scripting. This large community will now be able to develop solutions faster and with less complexity, meaning a quicker time to market and a reduction in developer costs. Simplify your Cisco solutions with AutomationFX SDK today.
The AutomationFX SDK is really designed to make it easy to do integrations with Communication Manager. For anybody who's investigated or tried doing bespoke solutions, even simple stuff like CTI screen pops and things like that. And I say simple, it's not simple to do them, but from a feature point of view, they're technically quite basic. Doesn't mean they're easy to write, but it's not exactly a complex thing, even just to do basic click to call in the grand scheme of things. But when it comes to doing that from a development perspective, it can be really difficult because there can be, Java you have to learn. There's the very specific way you have to drive the Cisco JTAPI libraries and things like that, or TSP drivers. There's also the complexity that comes with CTI-based operations because it's incredibly event-driven and just a hard thing to program against just because of the nature of the API. So anyway, we've basically come up with a way to simplify all that. That's really why it's classed as middleware. So we're bridging the gap between the kind of older, dare I say it, legacy APIs that Communication Manager exposes, and we're normalizing and simplifying and modernizing them by presenting it as technically as a REST API, which is the same way that almost every modern application exposes itself. So you're talking about things like WebEx Teams, Microsoft Teams, and anything else. They basically all use this kind of approach. So effectively, it means that for anybody who has or will, and maybe in the future, look at either integrations or writing their own application with, forward-looking products like WebEx Teams, etc., rather than kind of leaving your potentially existing on-premise environment behind, or having to spend a lot of money or just miss out on the capability, it's really here to bridge that gap. That's its kind of main point. I've got some examples in a minute about, because you can do a lot of things, right? It's the same, always the case when you create a general solution to something. So it might not be very obvious right now what you could possibly do with it. So I'm obviously going to give you some examples. The way that it exposes itself is to a self-documented API. It uses a technique called Swagger, which is a a way to document REST APIs technically, and it even has an interactive testable interface, which is really nice. Now, it might not be for a typical collaboration engineer to use this, but if you've got any, average or above web developer, he'll have done stuff like this before and used tools like very similar to this, so it should be very, very quick and easy for them to pick it up and prove that it's working, etc. So you can interactively test all your API resources that we put a front end in front of, and it means you do some amazing things. Make phone calls, answer calls, check the state of a phone, etc. Many more beyond. And we've got two main kind of resources, um, other than the application itself. We have a GitHub repository. The URLs are there. You technically just search for the word AutomationFX. It is quite a unique word. You'll find them anyway on Google. But basically, two repositories. One which is called Awesome AutomationFX, the kind of top level one, which kind of gives you a little bit of everything, and that's it'll be the kind of entry point, and as things get fed into, there'll be it's like an umbrella page effectively. Then there's a specific instance of the SDK. Now, what we've actually done is we've gone down the Python path. Now, it is programming language independent, so it doesn't have to be Python, but certainly the direction that Cisco, in particular Cisco DevNet, the developer section of Cisco, are going down is the Python path. So anybody who's doing anything that we're aware of note in the kind of Cisco development space, they're generally orientated around Python. At least there's some foundation there. So that's why we started with the Python language. And what we've created is an SDK which wraps around the REST API, and it means you just do a couple of simple Python functions, which you're going to see in a little minute, and I'm hopefully not going to frighten you off with some code. And you can drive your call manager through that. So we'll see how the demo goes and if you like that. But that's a quick kind of overview. Drilling down a little bit, what we've technically done is basically made the SDK stroke API of the AutomationFX platform available from 7.1 onwards. It's disabled by default, and we can turn it on a license by license basis. So to get it enabled, you just send a request into sales@unifiedfx.com. It is preview. It's a really important statement. What that basically means is it's subject to change. So if you do create something against, basically version 7.1, you will need to modify or update it at some point in the future. The main release that we're targeting is 8.0 of PhoneView stroke AutomationFX later this year, hopefully October, but you never know. There's a lot of work to do. And when we get to that point, that's when everything should be production ready and finalized. That's the theory. The main thing about that, it's not necessarily about the software quality, it's actually about the stability of the API, that we won't change our minds on how we expose things. That's really what we mean by going from kind of preview into production. It's about whether or not things change, not whether or not things work. So we've already spent time in the last kind of year or two making sure, longer than that actually, making sure everything works. The refinement stage is just stabilizing the kind of operations that we're exposing and the detail behind them so they don't change in the future. And when they do change, they'll be version controlled, but it's not version controlled yet. Now, in terms of some of the things that this enables you to do, and there's many more things beyond this, this is just some of the maybe the more obvious things, is top item, which actually comes up quite a lot. People every now and again ask us, can we script or automate PhoneView? And that's one of the reasons why we've created this, because it's one of the many things it can do. Now, PhoneView is great, and especially in version 7 with the virtual endpoints and things. There's some amazing testing type operations you can perform at various levels of scale that suits, all interactively. But obviously, kind of moving forward, people really want to be able to automate these things. That's what obviously AutomationFX is designed to do. So that's one thing you can do with it. As I kind of mentioned as an example earlier, you can do things like CTI screen pops. So that's where, just to be clear, that's when a call comes into a phone and you pick up that call event. You can possibly do a database dip, look up some information based on the party that's calling or how they enter the call flow, and then do something. And that might be an XML message to the phone. Sometimes people do a little picture, a little contact card, as a simple example. Other times, more commonly, it might be a CRM system, like Salesforce or something, and you can navigate to that customer's record automatically. So basically, if you get a sales rep or someone in your customer service area and a call comes in, basically you can automatically present the agent with the relevant information. There's obviously ways to do that in other systems, contact center platforms, but this is at the lower level. This just means it could work for anybody and everybody, so it's kind of making it more open and simple for that type of capability. Messaging, this is kind of specific down the notification FX side of things. So that means that you can use the API to send messages en masse to lots, audio and text, etc., to lots of phones. What you can actually also do is you can initiate a message from a phone, right? Normally that would just go to other phones, but you can actually technically send a message external to AutomationFX like another system. So for example, one of the integrations that are due to work on quite soon is with a company called Regroup. So they do mass notifications already, but they don't do anything on the Cisco side of things. So we're looking to do a partnership with them so that customers who could basically have Regroup and NotificationFX can join the two together using exactly this SDK, and that means that you could either be initiated from Regroup side and then send messages out to Cisco phones, or technically they could also initiate from a Cisco phone, the message sent to Cisco phones and downstream into Regroup and then sent on to mobile phones and whatever kind of services that they're integrated with. So that's the kind of messaging scenario. Provisioning, we have a wrapper around the AXL API. For anybody who's not familiar with it, this is the API that Cisco exposed to access the configuration database in Communication Manager. It's not a kind of typical database. You just don't normally just go and read and write to it the way you would normally a standard database. There's a kind of layer in front, which is this AXL API. There's kind of different ways to drive it, and we've got all those ways implemented. But we've translated the AXL interface, which is technically a SOAP interface, which is a little bit tricky to use sometimes, into a REST API, which has made it a little bit more simpler and universal for people to use. So that means that you could do a simple command to update a line, create a device, and things like that. And then finally, and the one I'm going to do a demonstration on, if I don't run out of time, is automated testing. So we actually think of all the things, it's probably going to be the main driver for using AutomationFX. I mean, I'm sure we've already got a lot of things we're doing with people and that are quite interesting and different. But if there's anything that's quite fundamental to telephony, making sure phone calls work is obviously right up there. So this is more of although you could kind of class that in the same kind of thing as automate script PhoneView, this is more a case something beyond even automating PhoneView that we've got a concept for that you'll be able to start doing with this. And I mean, I'm going to show you this in a demo in a little minute, I guess, but basically from an admin interface perspective, there's a developer menu when you get this turned on. It's got a couple of items under it. One of them is called apps. Within you're in the apps page, you get a list of the apps on the system. An app is a very, very simple thing. It's just two things really. It's a name and an API key. The name's just a friendly name so you can identify it. We call it apps instead of keys because we've got future plans that can extend beyond just what it does at the moment. So it's a good placeholder calling it an app. But effectively, it's the integration point from a permissions perspective. And when you create an app, you basically get an API key, and that is what you use to authenticate your external system application and get its requests authorized. Now, the thing about when you create an app for integration, you must assign a policy. Just creating app entry on its own is not enough. That gives you a key, great, but it will be able to do absolutely zero on its own. Again, this is one of the reasons why this ties in with the policy feature, because without the policy feature, we couldn't restrict and define what apps do. So that third bullet point where it says note, you must create and assign a policy to this app. So you create the app first, you go back to go to the policy page, create or use an existing policy, and add this app as a member. Just type its name, it will find it, and you can assign it. So that's just an important step. I mean, this is the first time I've kind of brought this out, so I'm sure we're going to have to help a lot of people and things like that. But just trying to kind of give you a flavour for how it works. Okay, now we're on to demo. So I'll get 15 minutes, and I don't know if there's been too many questions, maybe not too bad. So I'll try and do a relatively quick demo if I can. So what you're seeing right now is the web admin interface for the AutomationFX platform. This is where you get the PhoneFX and NotificationFX functionality. The system I'm running right now is actually the kind of alpha of version 8, so it's beyond what you're going to download, so there's extra stuff in here. If there was time, I'd maybe tease you with it, but I think we might be a little bit short. See if folk hang around. But obviously it has the 7.1 capabilities in here, and the main one to talk about at the moment is the policy. So you've got the configuration menu, policy, you've got a list of policies here, so you just click the new button, takes you this form to fill in, so let's call it Glasgow Help Desk, and yeah, my machine's run a wee bit slow here unfortunately, and let's just go Help Desk. These are for the okay, and in this case, if I scroll down, you can see the different features. We kind of grouped them by kind of product name. So for PhoneFX, for example, we would have the ability to remotely control a phone and the ability to edit a phone, separate entries. So if I only want to give someone the ability to control a phone but not make any changes, that would be this option here. If I go further down, the NotificationFX functionality, the ability to send text messages, etc. That's just a single thing here. There's some extra things in here I don't really want to go into right now. It's something we can go into on a customer by customer basis, but fundamentally, generally speaking, the entries here map to the pages on the left-hand side, roughly speaking. Not always, but roughly speaking. So for example, configuration, clusters, parameters, policy, license. Notice that matches up here. So we're trying to do that where possible. There's an odd thing where that wasn't really the case, but that should make it pretty straightforward. So it's kind of page by page access level at the moment. We can actually go into more detail in the future, but we just kind of start with a relatively simple set of features. But if customers say, oh, can you break that down to X, Y, Z choices, there's ways that we can do that. So we're going to collate that feedback and we'll do some updates in the future. So in this case, I'm doing remote control. And for a bit of fun, I've got the phones filter here. So by default, the person would be able to see every single phone on the platform, right? And this can talk to multiple clusters, etc., at the same time. So it could be cluster-wide, or across multiple clusters rather, not just the one cluster. So if I expand this drop-down list, then, oh, I think I forgot to save this earlier. Damn. Well, I'll tell you what, see for now, I'm just going to be cheeky. I'm going to choose the 7941 phones. But imagine I created a filter called Glasgow based on device pool. I'll maybe go back and do that in a little minute. That would be the one that we set. And if I go down and I hit save, I've got a little notification policy saved. And now that I've saved it, I get this members button available to me. So when I click members, so we can see from a breadcrumb perspective, I'm in the policies page, I'm inside the Glasgow Help Desk, and I can now add members to this help desk. So if I find Mohammed, oh, before I do that actually, just to make it a little bit clear, see if you look at this list, as I start typing, excuse me, it actually gives you useful information. So it doesn't just give you the thing it's matched, it gives you the type of thing. Because it can search multiple different clusters, it gives you the name of the cluster that you've identified it with. Because it can also search users and groups, it tells you if it's an end user, app user, or a group as well. So it kind of helps you to choose the right one, basically. So I want Mohammed, the end user, so I'm just going to choose that entry there. I click add, and you can see in the table below, it now has Mohammed, who's an end user, and he's on cluster 1. And obviously, I just click remove if I want to take him out of that policy. Now, here's the fun bit, and this is maybe where I'll do this filter edit actually. If I click preview, fingers crossed, it's going to open a new page. Some browsers you have to kind of refresh it. Chrome seems to be okay. Safari you have to refresh it. Sometimes like a pop-up blocker you have to approve. But once it opens this other page, this is the impersonation I was talking about. So just to show you that again, if I go back to the list of members, I clicked on the preview button, and then it's opened up. That's for Mohammed, and it's opened up this new page, and it's effectively showing me the exact same thing Mohammed's going to see. Now, what you should notice is his menu choices have reduced significantly. As a sneaky little extra one, which is a prototype that we're putting together, so ignore that one. That's just a new feature we're working on. But the key thing is he's only got access to the phones page. And if I go in here, just take off these little checkboxes for now. What you might notice is he's looking at some phones, right? But the phones, he's only looking at registered 7941 phones, and that's because he's got that filter applied. But let me show you something. This is kind of fun when it works. What was the alert? So let me just rearrange my screen a little bit. So I'll drag that to the left. I don't know why, but my system's a bit laggy at the moment. And I've got that on the right. Maybe a little bit of a squeeze for the content, obviously. But on the left-hand side, I've got the policy page, and notice I'm in as the administrator. On the right-hand side, I'm basically in as Mohammed, right? Now, if I scroll down a little bit, you can see there's 13 phones right now because it's filtered. If I go back to the help desk policy that I have as a member of, and you note earlier I chose registered 7941, so that's only types of devices he can see. If I open this up and I choose all phones and I go down and I click save, in real time, only because it's impersonated, in real time actually tells the impersonated session to refresh. And if I scroll down, if I can use the right scroll bar, you can now see on our lab all the phones, which is 96 configured devices. Now, let me actually, if I can be quick, let's try and create that filter. Yeah, we're on that page, so get my scroll bar to work properly. Oh, let's do this one actually. I might need to make this full screen actually for it to kick in. Yeah. Right, so let me create another filter. So let me take them away for now. So quite a common way people would restrict things is by device pool, obviously, and I did obviously want to make this a Glasgow restriction. So let's use this Glasgow device pool here. So if I click the checkbox, and then I click in the filter box here, and I'm just going to call the filter Glasgow. The way this filter works is a little bit clunky actually. You have to type in the new entry, press enter on the keyboard, and then click save. And when you do that, it'll now have a new filter entry called Glasgow. Okay, so if I go back up, open up configuration, oops, click properly, click policy, see there's the Glasgow help desk. Let's click edit to change it. I'm going to rearrange my windows again if I can without them going to screw. Okay, so again on the left hand side we've got the Glasgow help desk. On the right hand side we've got Mohammed, and if I go down to the filter here, so instead of seeing all phones, all 96 at the moment, and I change that new filter I just created, the Glasgow one, I choose that one, scroll down and save it. If you watch what happens, it refreshes the impersonate window, and if I scroll down, you can see it's got 25 entries. And if you look at the device pool column, which is this one here, you can see they're all Glasgow. So that's the policy side of it. It's not really that deep in terms of how, the options in there. That we've deliberately tried to keep it as simple as possible. So feel free to play around with it and give us some feedback, see what you think. Now, with that done, I want to show you the AutomationFX side of things. Now, in order to hopefully not put people off, because it is fundamentally a developer thing and not everybody might be up for that, we're just going to do a very simple demonstration. This isn't going to show you how to set it all up. It's not even going to show you in reality anything much in terms of coding. It's just going to be a nice simple thing. Now, but there's actually a very specific reason why I'm going to show you what I've set up here. So this is really, it's not the only thing it can be. This is really for the automated testing scenario. So what I've got open is PhoneView on the left-hand side. I've just got 3 phones visible at the moment, and as you might see with a little second hand flashing away, it's refreshing those phone screens. So these are my 3 test devices, for lack of a better term. On the right-hand side is an interesting thing, which only came across recently, and I think it's an excellent system. It's called Jupyter, Jupyter, if I've remembered how to spell it correctly. It might be on this webpage somewhere. Oh, there, it's up at the top. You can actually see it. Jupyter, Jupyter. Now, it's actually technically, it's been around for quite a long time. It's something that data scientists use, so I didn't think it was appropriate. I was aware of it, but not really in detail. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting thing. Everybody keeps talking about that. Wonder what it does. I had a little look at it a couple of months back and thought, wow, this is really quite simple and usable. And there's kind of different variants of it. Jupyter Notebook is the original variant, but the kind of more up-to-date thing that's people have moved forward with is called Jupyter Lab. So if you're ever going to play with this, the thing I'm going to demonstrate here, it's called Jupyter Lab. Now this is one of the many different ways you could drive AutomationFX, but I think this is going to be our primary kind of go-to from a kind of demonstration perspective and things like that. At the end of the day, you can run any code from anywhere. So where do you start? Everybody who does write code have got their own environments and things like that. But what we're trying to achieve here is something that can be done without being a coder, right? And that's where the Jupyter Lab kind of significantly helps, I would say. Now, the way it kind of works, without getting into too much detail, is on the left-hand side, once you've got it running and you start at a particular folder, etc., and I'm not going over how you set it up, that's a separate thing entirely, and we'll maybe do some sessions on that down the line. But you've got this thing called a Jupyter Notebook, right? It's this IPYNB file, whatever crazy extension it is. So I've actually got a couple of them open here, and this is all web-based, right? It's nice and clean on a web browser. So it shows, so it's like I get a file browser, so I can see the files in there, I can open the file, I can actually edit them and stuff like that. The main reason for it, though, is for combining code and output. It's great for generating reports and extracting data and things like that. But it's also good for some simple things too. And what's actually happening, let me just minimize this, put it back to the right. What's actually happening here is you've got inside a notebook, you've got cells, and cells are 2 kinds of cells. There's either a code cell or a text cell, right? And each cell, if it's a code cell, for example, it can provide an output. So you can run code and you can see a live output from it. And that's what makes this really simple. Now, I've obviously set this system up, and some point down the line, we'll take you through this and we'll do some videos for it if anybody's interested. But if you go the setup for now, but I've already installed Jupyter Labs. I've already put in the AutomationFX Python SDK. I've already set up the authentication technically, just to briefly show you. I've got a file in that same root folder called settings.json with the structure. It's a JSON file, and it's got the API key. That API key, actually, just to prove a point, I'm not cheating, is if I go back to here, I didn't show you this yet. I did talk about it in the slides, but this is the apps page, and if I show that, oops, the wrong one. Oh no, I'm lying. Oh no, this might not work. I think it's. Oh no, what have I done? What have I done? There's a good chance this won't work. I must have changed something. I didn't even spot it. Oh, wait a minute. I think I edited the file somewhere else. So that's an old version of the file. Let me open it again. Fingers crossed. save my bacon there. Yeah, it was an old version of the file I had open, so I changed it elsewhere. So you can see that first entry called app1, that's the API key, that matches that value there. This is the server where AutomationFX is running, the port, the scheme, and a funky thing called CloudFX we're working on as well. So you're seeing lots of extra stuff that we've not got ready yet. If I go back to here and put this out of the way, so I've got PhoneView on the left, right? Same PhoneView, PhoneView 7.1, etc. On the right-hand side, I've got AutomationFX access, the same AutomationFX 7.1 that you can now get access to. I've got access via Python running in this Jupyter cell. And what's in here by design is really simple, right? I'll try my best to explain how simple it is. These are just variables. This is just the syntax of Python. It's actually very natural language. There's not a lot of syntax you have to dress it up with, thankfully. There's no semicolons and things like that you have to worry about. So it's generally quite tolerant, for lack of a better phrase. So what I've done, don't have to do it this way. This is just a good, clearer way to present it. In the first cell, I'm treating this like an initialization. So I'm pulling in the AutomationFX SDK. Underneath the hood, it's reading that settings file, so it knows how to talk to the server. And then I've defined 3 phones. I could call this anything I want. I could call it T1 for test 1 device, etc. But for now, I'm calling it P1, P2, P3. Those numbers, they just match the DNs of primary DN of those 3 devices there. And the next cell is the operations to perform, and we've got that documented on the GitHub site, and you can play around with it. But you can see that's pretty simple. It's going to make a call, pause, and answer. But anyway, enough description. Let's run it. So when I click the little run button, there's different ways to run. This will just run the one cell. When I click that, that first cell runs. Technically, the number is the run order. So I've run this a couple of times to test it earlier. That means it's the sixth operation to perform. So I can run any cell at any time I want. But I'm just going to go through the natural flow, and I'm going to run this second cell here where I click the run icon. So it's loaded up the API, set those variables for me. It's now ready to execute the next cell. When I click the run button, if you read the text that's outputting and look at PhoneView at the same time, you can see that it's performing that call operation from P1 to P2, from one phone to the other. It's waiting for 5 seconds. That's the pause command. It's then answering on the recipient, waiting for 10 seconds. You got a 10-second connected call, and then it's dropping the call from one end. And for each of those operations, you can see that it's basically reporting the action down in the bottom there. Now, that's a particularly basic example. Hopefully you can see the syntax is relatively straightforward that pretty much anybody could follow. Technically, I didn't have to even put a variable in there. I could just have put in, 10043 or whatever it is. So I don't even need to have that set of variables. It just makes it easier if you're going to change and update these things in the future. If I go back to, whoops, daisy, Control Z. I go back to that. If suddenly those phones are offline, I've got a different set of test devices, I just need to edit the number and the test will carry on as you would expect. Now, conscious of time, actually over. Oops, got carried away there. That's it in terms of demo. So let me jump back to PowerPoint. Is that still sharing? Yep, it is. I'm just going to quickly wrap up and see if there's time for any questions for folk hanging about. So it's free to go to version 7.1. Obviously, free to upgrade as long as you've got a valid license key. Obviously, it's no additional charge to upgrade, just an existing right to use license, etc. The existing license key will work. You don't need a new license key as long as it's still valid, obviously. You can just install on top of the previous version. The AutomationFX component does require a 64-bit operating system, but that's pretty standard nowadays. It does require .NET Framework 4.5.2, but that will tell you already when it gets installed. If you go to that new version, you've been quite an old version, it will kind of guide you. And basically, I don't know if we clicked the button yet. Hold on a second. I was going to do a live deploy, but we kind of ran out of time there, so I could publish it. It'd probably take about 3 or 4 minutes just for it to upload. But Mohammed's just clicking the magic button in the sky. So literally, by the time you've dropped off this, If you go to the download page in PhoneView, 7.1 should be available. And let's see. Oh, yep. Can I just wrap it up? So future events, for anybody who's lucky enough to attend Cisco Live, we'll be in Europe shortly. We're going to go to, or planning to go to San Jose for the Communication Manager 14 partner VT session. We've not heard anything about the dates. It's been rumoured to be about March, April. We should also be going to Amsterdam for the equivalent one there at the start of the year. Don't have a dates for that either at the moment. I kind of forgot about it, but just if anybody's going to Amsterdam, we'll probably see you there too. Obviously, going to Cisco Live US as well. And roughly speaking, we're targeting October for the launch of the kind of stable, non-changing version of AutomationFX. But it's quite a lot of work to do, so it's a bit hard to confirm a target at this point. And that's it. So thanks for staying with us if you're still here. Sorry that I ran over. Hopefully, looks like Mohammed's been able to answer the questions as we go. Oh, excellent. That's a funny one. I like that. So Bill Lake's asking to see the screens, right? Okay. I haven't actually tested it today because it literally have been flipping code left, right, and centre. So the odds of it working are pretty slim, to be honest. But as you asked, why not? Check it out. Before I show it to you, let me just check if at least a chance of it working. I need to have the right account in here. Oh, it does have the right account. Right, fingers crossed. Oh, wrong button. Screens. Let's see what's in the screens. Okay, I might need to shuffle it a wee bit for it. Oops, sorry. It is quite laggy for some reason. Don't know what I've done on my system today. And actually, I'm going to get rid of this. Oh, yeah, it's kicking in. Just I think I've got too much going on at the moment. It's taking a wee second to kick in. What we've got a prototype for is the screen view capability of PhoneView in a web browser. So it is literally rough cut first iteration. What I've just realised is a lot of these phones are offline. So if you bear with me a little second, if I change to registered phones, you can actually see something. I'll go to 7941, registered, that's a bit better, and zoom in. Don't know if I need to move away and back again to give that a little kick. Oh yeah, on future stuff, we've got a new phones page. It's just a new technical implementation of how we query and present the phone information. It's designed so that we can do bulk operations, some we couldn't kind of sensibly do in the previous kind of version of table that we had. So it's a concept that we've added on the right hand side. You'll be able to expand and you'll be able to go and select one or more devices and then perform operations like ITL deletes and all those funky macro kind of things and stuff like that. So that's part of the moving things from or copying the functionality from the desktop form factor into the browser. Let me jump back in here. Yes, it's really not quite kicking in today. I probably need to recompile the the web code on this one. As you can probably tell, it's basically all the phone screens are in here, and you can do the same types of operations. You can drag, select, zoom in, zoom out. It's probably a little bit laggy over WebEx. Oh, there we go. It's finally kicking in. You probably had to time out the older screenshots when it was on the offline phones. Oh man, my machine's so laggy. Where are we? Yes, let's zoom in a little bit like that. And basically, it's designed so that as you're looking at the phones, it'll just refresh them. It'll always be refreshing. We've got a shared kind of screenshot mechanism, which should really be kind of very efficient. But say it's very first cut. We're going to try to get it into 8.0 if we can, but I got a feeling it's going to slip to 8.1 because just quite a lot of other things we're working on at the same time. But down at the end, we're going to have basically the same kind of feature set that is in the PhoneView desktop interface, but all in a browser. If you see that in first-hand in person, which we'll try to demonstrate if you come to one of the Cisco Live events, you'll see just how fast it is. It's as fast as PhoneView, which doing that in the browser is no mean feat. Right, there's probably quite a few questions. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'll keep on going and just work my way through the questions. Apologise for running over time a little bit. I did have quite a lot of content to go over. I'll just go through the questions until I can either get bored of them or run out of time or everybody's gone away home and see where we are. Now, I think most of the answers, I'm just trying to spot any that are interesting or that haven't been. That's a good question. I like that one. Any ServiceNow integration? So at this point in time, we treat AutomationFX as just a vanilla API or SDK. We haven't done any specific examples of integrations, but that's why we created the GitHub repository, because we're going to build things in there and examples and flesh things out, but there's quite a lot of work to do to try and touch all the different ways that people could use it. So what we're keen to do is to get other people, if they want to and if they're interested, to maybe do stuff as well and contribute in there. We'll maybe see if there's mutually beneficial ways to make that worth everybody's time, etc. But we're focusing on the integration and the platform in our first instance. Once we get all that to the level that we want, then we'll be able to spend some time working our way through lots of different integration types. ServiceNow is a perfect example of the sort of thing that we'd want to do in the future. Good question. Does the lab version of PhoneView include AutomationFX? Now, technically, from a software point of view, yes. Any version, any download of PhoneView 7.1 has AutomationFX in there. It's all down to licensing, so it's all on request. Now, we do reserve the right to refuse at the moment. If we do get quite a lot of people asking and we're a little bit kind of tied down for time to help everybody, we'll most likely prioritise paying customers first. But if anybody has, an interesting or useful use case they want to spend some time evaluating AutomationFX with, then absolutely feel free. Even if it's just a lab edition, we'll still have a conversation with you. But bear with us as we maybe have to prioritise things a little bit. Okay. Yep. People asking for the recording. We'll share that at the end. Just in case it wasn't familiar, you can email sales@unifiedfx.com. Power BI integration, another great example of what we do. So any of these integrations, we don't have anything off the shelf, but because of how we've built the platform, if you've got any half decent skilled web developer that knows how Power BI works, they'll be able to very easily use our API and build some integration between the two. Can roles policies be applied to all clusters at once? Let's see. Now, it's a little bit tricky because when people have got multiple clusters, there is zero guarantee that there's any consistency between those. Now, the only thing that might be consistent is the user, but even then, technically, that doesn't have to be the case. There could very well be situations where there's users that exist on one cluster, not another, and vice versa. So we kind of had to include the cluster level as part of that membership. So if you have 5 clusters, you in some respects don't need to add 5 members, because what happens is it actually just checks each of those 5 clusters. And if you only assign one membership, as long as they're a member at least one of them, then the policy will be applied. So you don't technically need to set up with multiple clusters, but you do need to be a little bit mindful that if you're going to change and update clusters, you need to make sure that you don't have any members that are part of our old cluster that's moving forward. We do use the database GUID as the identifier of the member. So if you do upgrades and things like that, that should have no change. So in theory, you might not even need to update members anyway. But to be absolutely honest, doing multi-cluster support is kind of tricky, because there's no real consistent way or guaranteed way that the systems can be accessed consistently. A good question there. Can you support multiple syslog servers? Yes, absolutely. Technically, we use an open source component called nlog, which is just a library basically. And that library has an extension that supports syslog, and it's just an XML configuration file. It's got some generic RFC support for syslog systems. The tricky bit is figuring out what the parameters are and matching that up with your syslog server, but it can do it with multiple targets simultaneously, etc. So that's not an issue. Another little bit down the line is what we are actively working on. Again, it might take a little bit of time for it's ready, might be next 2021. Is we've made a major change in the last last 6 months really. We've changed over to a kind of scalable, redundant database platform. Technically, it's called MongoDB. So version 8 onwards, we'll use a very scalable database. And the key reason why we did that is it will then unlock the ability to do high availability and multi-node and even greater vertical and horizontal scaling. So that's a big change we had to do. That's why it's taken us kind of longer than we'd hoped to get the SDK side of it out, because we had to kind of make some major changes first before we can kind of move forward to the kind of production level one. I think that's largely it. I might have missed something, obviously, although I think Hammer and stuff's been good at answering your questions. So I'll wrap up there. If anybody's still about, really appreciate you hanging around this long, and hopefully catch up with you some point later in the year. Thanks for stopping by. Take care.